Welcome, everyone, to Tips and Tools. Today we're going to be covering prescriptions, specifically opiates. I'm Dr. Carlos, behavioral psychologist.
And I'm Dr. G, clinical psychologist. Welcome to Tips and Tools. What are we talking about today, Carlos?
Prescriptions and opiates today.
Opiates, okay.
So that's going to be fascinating.
Uh-huh.
We have a lot of things to cover today in regards to opiates.
Yes.
It's a big, broad topic.
Yeah.
So I think today we're only going to focus on opiates.
Yes.
We'll find out.
Fantastic.
I know opiates have been a big problem around the nation. One of the biggest states that has issues with opiates, from what I've read in the studies, was Maryland. Baltimore, Maryland.
Really?
It's one of the number one states, and New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing about New Hampshire is a lot of political candidates are going over there and talking about addiction in their families.
They are.
Carly Fiorina, I think, mentioned her stepdaughter. I think She died of an overdose.
Oh, wow.
If I remember correctly. And then there's also, I think Chris Christie had addicts in his family. So they're sharing their stories. I'm sure a little bit of self-interest there, of course. But at the same time, highlighting and focusing the challenges of that nation, of that state particularly.
Sure.
But before we get lost on that, what are opiates?
Okay, well, we covered that in terms of what they are. I mean, very briefly, we can talk about opiates as narcotics, sleep-inducing agents. And in other words, they're also depressants because they're depressing the system. Okay. But the main function, if you will, or effect is really just sleep induction. Like it puts a person into a, as the word says, sleep mode, narcotic. That's where the Latin root comes from.
So it's used for like a painkiller?
Well, it would be a painkiller for sure because it puts a person in that state of experience, both mind and body experience to feel numb, right? That's their major functioning. It numbs the cells, it numbs a person, it numbs the mind of a person. And as a result, we either fall asleep and then we don't feel the pain. And as you know, the pain is a subjective experience of certain stimuli, right? So basically, we are kind of numbed to those stimuli. The stimuli are still there. Let's say if a part of our body is aching because it is injured, that site of injury is still sending the nervous or the nerve impulses, right? So the impulses are going to the body, what they call the afferent, the signals that are coming from the limbs toward the central nervous system. So that we are receiving them, but at the through the spinal cord, and then the ultimate nerves and tract that lead to the brain, they are being numbed or distracted to these signals. So the signals are being received, but they're kind of being ignored,
so for those
rather than registered.
For those who don't have that kind of background, then pain can be, let's say you get injured here in your hand or your thumb. Right. That's a package of pain that's given to a courier system. The courier system drives up, and then the doors are closed. Nobody's receiving the package of pain.
They kind of receive it, but they stack it up for later processing.
Oh, no.
So they don't process it immediately.
So they're going to have to do the work sooner or later.
Well, that's the thing. It's not necessary. It's almost like, I would say, a waste bin that is destroying the packages. So the pain doesn't accumulate to be processed later on. It's just being put in a trash can and discarded for now. But that doesn't mean that you can prevent the next delivery, right? So once you get the agents to come back to do the register, like the clerk. Let's say you have fired all the clerks, and you have created not fired them, but let's say you gave them time off. Right.
PC, you're trying to be politically correct, yes.
No, actually, because if
they're coming back to work.
Because they're coming back to work. So then we could say, okay, you have rehiring those agents. Right? If you fire them, you would rehire them. If you don't fire them, you send them on vacation or time off. And then in the meantime, you have created a more or less garbage disposal for all these packages that are being delivered and received to go into the trash bin and discard it.
Okay.
But once the clerks or the agents are back, then they're going to receive the packages and process them. We are not stopping the delivery. We're not stopping the source, the material, production. The production of pain continues because my thumb is hurting. as long as this is hurting, it's going to continue. And there's a reason this is hurting, because there's apparently a wound, injury, something is out of order, right? So we have, if you think about it, very smart cells, right? Our cells, they don't create pain out of no reason, without reason. They don't. So if something is out of order, they're creating pain to alert us that we need to pay attention to that disorder. It's a warning system. Exactly. So going back to opiates, what do? They numb the central nervous system and the entire body to the to this delivery, to the pain signals that are being sent. They're not stopping the wound from wounding. They don't heal the wound. They only they help us to ignore the pain that is, or the signals, the pain signals that are being received. That's all they do.
Only for physical injuries, or they also use for mental pain?
Well, that's the thing. How can you stop mental pain if you think about it? It's go ahead.
Because some people do use it for that, so they get numb to such a degree. Now, this is non-professionally, obviously, right? How does that? What are they doing there?
Well, that's the thing. You see, if you think about, have you taken opiates before due to surgery, injury?
Never.
Nothing. So, what do you do for pain? A good example. You do like NSAIDs, like.
What do I do for pain?
Yeah, pain. What do you take?
I've never had pain like that ever in my life, unfortunately. Sorry.
That's fortunate.
Very fortunate.
Headaches. What do you do for headaches?
Nothing. Massage.
Really? You just haven't taken any medication?
The only medication I take for Tylenol would be for like a flu or something like that. A flu or a cold, but never for like an injury, physical injury, no.
Okay. So you're kind of taking something that is more of an anti-inflammation to help out versus opiates, right? So opium, again, morphine, heroin, and other synthetic materials around it, those work in a way that basically, again, that's what they call narcotics. They put your body, your cells, and your mind in a numbed situation to the point of sleeping. Like they put you to sleep, more or less. You're on your way to a full sleep. Now, before you enter that sleep mode, you would be what? What do you think? What happens to us before we really fall asleep? We are kind of...
You mean the hypnotic... hypnagogic state?
Exactly, in a hypnagogic state, in a groggy, dizzy, right? That's what we are experiencing, right? So that's what more or less opiates do. They and that's what
like a low hypnotic state, like a theta beta brainwave.
Hypnotic state, yes, and relaxed. The best word, for instance, would be, it's really relaxed. You know, your mind is relaxed, your body is relaxed. It's the first state that you get into in that relaxed mode, to a point where you're kind of bordering on losing consciousness, right? Because when we are sleeping, we're not conscious.
I remember studying Milton Erickson with the hypnosis. He said that would be like the theta brainwave stage.
Brainwave, yes. Yeah, but which is a little bit different, because even though the brainwaves are the same, but also it's a question of awakenness. Are you in a mode of awareness as to what is happening to you? Because in a hypnotic state, even though you have changed your brain waves, you are still aware that you are in a hypnotic state.
That's a good point. Yeah.
You're still aware of some of the environmental factors. For instance, let's say you are in a deep hypnotic state and you're still aware that, okay, there's another person in the room. I'm in the room. I'm sitting on a chair, right? But when you're completely asleep, you're completely unaware of the bed you're sleeping on, or the chair you're sitting in, or who is around you, right? Maybe, let's say, your spouse who stepped next to you, woke up and went to grab a cup of water or whatnot. You don't register those moments. You cannot be aware of it because it is that type of a deep sleep. There's no consciousness about environment. There's some consciousness about internal stimuli that are going on, right? Which is more or less aligned with like a dream state, right?
So this explains a lot why certain people will then become addicted to it, especially if they have a lot of pain in their life emotionally, correct?
Right. Very good.
Yeah, because it really numbs them out.
Yeah, think about it. Who doesn't want to be relaxed?
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know that way relaxed, but
Yeah. So if you think of mental pain, who wouldn't want to forget about them? Who wouldn't want to put them aside? Who wouldn't want to not worry about them and kind of get a reprieve from them? It's like, give me a break. Why don't you give me a break? So that opiates allow a person to enter immediately, more is because they're fast acting, right?
Oh, are they?
So yeah, they're quite fast acting. Even with in pill form, they're fast acting. But if you go through other mechanisms such as basically smoking or intravenous, injecting in your body, they're even much more fast acting, like within seconds. With pills, it may take, a few minutes, like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Yeah, a few minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Fast.
Yeah, that's pretty fast.
Does it get longer the more you use them?
What gets longer? The pill? No,
No,
the pill doesn't get longer.
Does it take longer? Does it take longer for the effect to hit you if you're continually using it? Does your body get used to it? Does it become desensitized?
No, it doesn't take longer. It becomes shorter. The effect becomes shorter, right?
Okay.
Right, because your tolerance goes up. It's increased. Your tolerance increases. Therefore, and also your body now, due to conditioned metabolism, has learned how to metabolize the substances and kind of flush them more or less out of your system. And there's this issue of habituation. You see, the habituation goes hand in hand with tolerance. Habituation is simply getting used to, right? It becomes a new reality. We habituate. So something that had novelty the first time we took has lost its novelty, right? So now we are habituated to it. So it's nothing new anymore. Our mind and body, they have adjusted and adapted themselves to this novelty. So the novelty has lost its effect. Therefore, also that's part of it. So we are taking the same amount, but it doesn't have the same effect because we are used to it.
Got it. Okay.
Plus, on a cellular level and molecular level, our tolerance has changed. That means our body has adjusted the amount, the capacity that it can tolerate, right? So if the first time a person takes a pill, even for instance ibuprofen, a lot of people knock out when they take ibuprofen the first time because of no tolerance. They haven't had that in their system. So the body is overwhelmed because it has low tolerance. But when the body is taking in that substance and then kind of metabolizes it and gets used to it and adjusts to it, then it has increased its tolerance. Therefore, the next pill we are taking, it doesn't have the same original effect. So our body just continues as if you didn't necessarily take much, right? Now, if due to side effects, and as well as main and side effects of these drugs, we experience either a lot of pleasure, euphoria, happiness, joy, relaxation, right? Or we are reducing a lot of pain, then that experience itself turns into, again, due to habituation, almost like an expectation, right? And an expectation develops into a need. And that need develops into a craving, right?
That's a problem.
So if I'm getting used to feeling good, feeling wonderful, happy, euphoric, relaxed, joyful, and I've stepped away from a painful experience. I no longer experience pain. I get used to that. I like that, right?
Sure.
Every human being would like that. And then we certainly naturally develop a tendency to want more of that good thing, right? And kind of looking forward to probably spending the next few hours of our waking time in that state.
Hi, welcome to Adelante. This is Adelante Recovery, and my name is Yvette Kuglin, and I'm part of the staff.
Adelante Recovery Center has helped people in dual diagnosis for 5 years. We accept most PPO insurances and provide luxury accommodations and 24-hour support. To speak with an admissions counselor, call 1-888-242-4450.
A lot of time we don't even know what's wrong with us, and sometimes we need to get away to figure that out. So if you want to go for a little retreat out in Corona Del Mar, which is a confidential location, we're here to help. So we're only a phone call away. Thank you.
There are different types of opiates.
Right.
Do they go to different neural pathways? In other words, you can use one, but if it's not as effective, you can switch over to another one, like you were saying with the high tolerance level.
Yes.
Well, this pill doesn't do what it used to do. I'll switch to this opiate over here because it's going through a different neural pathway.
Not necessarily different neural pathways, but to some extent different neurotransmitters or neurotransmitter receptors.
Oh, okay.
Right. So now, interestingly, though, the entire family of drugs, that's what we have categorical labels. You see, when we say opiates, the reason we actually, lump sum everything into that type of a category is because they are attacking or affecting or influencing the same groups of neuroreceptors. Right?
GABA was one you
group.
mentioned before.
Yes. GABA is a neurotransmitter. The receptors would be a GABA receptor,
Okay.
or an opiate receptor, which is more or less dopamine. So so you could talk of a neuropathway in terms of the dopaminergic neuropathway. Right?
Okay.
That means the pathway that usually responds to dopamine.
And activates dopamine
And
production.
either activates, there are actually
suppresses.
multiple different, we will get into that later.
told you it was gonna get
Neurobiology.
complicated. Yeah.
It can activate, it can increase the receptivity of the neuroreceptors.
Okay.
The receptors. It can block neuroreceptors. It can decrease what they call the reuptake of neuroreceptors, because you see there is more or less a fluidity going on, kind of a assembly mechanism and disassembly mechanism, because once neurotransmitters have been produced, they have to be somehow either processed or reabsorbed or eliminated, right? So you got to process them, eliminate them, or reabsorb them. So within, and then if you add production to it, right, the different opportunities that substances and neuroreceptor or neurotransmitters can impact the functioning. They can impact the production level, decrease or increase production. They can impact the processing level of these neurotransmitters at the receptor site or beyond the receptor site, or the delivery of these produced materials. They can impact the elimination process of these receptors, or they can impact the reuptake or reabsorption of these. So that's why it is so complex. That's why you also have different types of, let's say, drugs, including an example would be what they call a SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, or SNRI, selective norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors.
For the audience, reuptake means
reabsorbing the material back into the cell
So you're using
the
more
original
of it?
cell.
Is it being heavily used, or are you actually taking away from being used?
It's taking away its effect.
Okay.
Right. So, but also it depends. It's very complex. It really depends what type of a drug we are talking about. For instance, the SSRIs, because they are inhibiting the reuptake of the serotonin, they increase the serotonin.
Because they keep it out in the synaptic cleft.
They take it back into the
Synaptic cleft.
out of the synaptic cleft into the axons, right?
Gotcha.
So it really is very complex. We will get into that later on. But going back to answering to your original question, if different drugs are kind of affecting neural pathways, certainly there are different neural pathways, but usually the same category affects the same neural pathway, like the opiates affect the dopaminergic neural pathway, but each subproduct, for instance, opiate versus morphine versus heroin, they can impact different neuroreceptors at different intensity levels. Right.
The reason I asked is because the actress Winona Ryder, she was caught shoplifting a few years ago. Right. And it's kind of an irony, right? You have a very wealthy Hollywood actress who's caught shoplifting.
Yes.
So obviously she's got something else going on there. But what they found in her purse were 8 different types of painkillers.
Right.
So it looked like they weren't all working, or maybe she didn't have access to one, or she was getting from other friends. Right. So I don't know. Is that a common thing too? Do they? When people
First of all, when we say different types of painkillers, they're probably referring to the intended use, not to the categories. You see, when we say painkiller, a barbiturate can become a painkiller. A beta blocker can become a painkiller, antihypertensive drug basically. An opiate can become a painkiller, NSAID can become a painkiller. Steroids.
And these all hit different receptor sites.
Different receptor sites, but the reason we call them painkillers is on the intended use, not on the chemical structure. So, for instance, again, remember, a barbiturate, even though it can become or can be used as a painkiller, it's not structurally designed to be a painkiller. It is an anxiolytic. It is designed to reduce anxiety, right? So these 8 painkillers could very well be 3 different categories of opiates, anxiolytics, and basically more or less either NSAIDs or even to some at times even antipsychotics that have that effect, like let's say Seroquel. Again, they have this numbing effect, sleep-inducing effect, but they're actually a different category with the side effect of being a painkiller.
Is it very common in today's society with these people who become addicts of medications, right? Prescription medication. Is it common for them to self-medicate? In other words, not that obviously they can take their own medications, but they start mixing and matching. Yeah. Because I know it's really prevalent to combine it with alcohol. Right. And these people seem to either, maybe the rationality is gone because of the addiction problem. Right. Or they just say, no, I can mix a little bit of alcohol, or I can mix the benzo with the opiate, and it's not going to be a problem. Do they tend to do that?
Definitely. Majority of people who are using these prescription drugs because of the unique experience that they have, subjective experience. So a barbiturate or benzodiazepine that helps a person kind of, if you will, get rid of their worries and anxiety, has a certain effect to them that they like, and that's a little bit different than, let's say, an opiate. For instance, to give an example, an opiate may make them a little bit sleepy and groggy and dizzy in a different way than the anxiolytic is doing. So for anxiolytics, it may take away the worry and anxiety, but not really make them sleepy and groggy. Right? Mm-hmm. So they may keep in mind that, I need this for now in the morning because I'm going to work, for instance, or have a meeting, so I can take that, pressure off, take the edge off, right?
Yeah.
And then I can go through my meeting and do this and that and talk to people, not worry too much. But as it, gets more into the evening, then either I'm going to take more of this and try to sleep, or I'm going to go to my opiates and take more of that because it knocks me out. It is perhaps for them faster acting. And also it removes a lot of basic body aches or, physical complaints. So it really depends on the individual. And sure, then they would create a cocktail based on their day and night and tasks and, goals.
It sounds dangerous if the
does.
doctor didn't tell you to do that.
Absolutely. It's life-threatening. It's that dangerous.
Because people will just do it willy-nilly.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, and that's how also a lot of people overdose, right? Because they know, have heard of it, or they know, or even they assume that a certain drug is going to knock them out and then just take them out, more or less, and overdose. But so going back to those opiates, in terms of, the categories that you mentioned, neuropathways, neurotransmitter receptors, it's very, very complex. And but generally, I think we explained enough in terms of their impact on the human body. However, we didn't explain the more or less the signs and symptoms of intoxication,
Yes, that's right.
as well as withdrawal. And let's see how many more minutes we have. We have about 34 minutes, right? Can we cover those?
Yeah, well, absolutely.
Okay.
And one of the things I just wanted to make sure people point out to people too, it doesn't discriminate whether you're poor or rich. We've seen actors and actresses such as Nicole Richie, who had a Vicodin addiction. We've seen Matthew Perry, who also had a Vicodin addiction, Kelly Osbourne, and a host of others. It doesn't have to be somebody who doesn't have money or a poor socioeconomic environment. But how does it affect somebody's sleep? You were talking about earlier using opiate, right?
Yeah.
So how does it work there?
Well, let's talk about a few areas of functioning.
Okay.
When it comes to using drugs, we want to look at how people change their thinking, cognitive abilities, how their mood changes or affective abilities, how their behavior changes or interaction with people around them and even themselves, how their sleep changes, sleep patterns, how their diet changes, right? How their bodily sensations change, like physiological sensations, which usually is called physical complaints, if you will, if somebody has a physical complaint, as well as
We might have to cover this in another segment, huh?
yeah, probably we can cover it in another segment, but also as well as more of let me see if I can put it in a category which is a little bit different than behavioral. I would say goal oriented or decision making, more or less.
How it affects decision
How it
making?
affects their decision making and goal orientation in life, which is a combination of their thinking, their feelings, their behaviors, as well as the physical symptoms that they have. Because decision making is really affected by all those, right? Like, let's say you didn't have a good night's sleep, right? You had recently, child coming to the world. You were overwhelmed as a newly, kind of a role, a father again, the second time father.
As far as I know, yeah.
So as far as you know. So if you think about it, that was taxing on you, right? For a few days, at least, at the beginning, even before, and still going. So losing sleep can affect your decision making. For instance, let's say if you didn't sleep well last night and you have a few appointments, you have a full day of appointments today, you may decide to take some of these appointments off just because you didn't sleep well. If possible, right? Unless you have to be at all these meetings, right? So that's one example that sleep can affect a person's decision making.
Yeah, I can't think as fast on my feet. I can't retain as well.
Right.
I mean, memory, if I have to read something, try to remember it and learn it for something, I can't do that as well either.
Good. So let me just leave with these categories, right? This when we because we have to create really another episode talking about in depth about all these areas of functioning. I call them areas of functioning, and also you can add more to it, like spirituality. A spiritual connection to the world. It can be intensified by drug use or detensified.
And this is sticking with the opiates in regards to the spirituality, or drugs in general?
Drugs in general.
Okay.
But these are good categories to keep in mind. Next episode, we will actually get into these areas functioning, how they're impacted by design or unintentionally as part of side effects of opiates and each drug thereafter.
Very complicated. Very complicated. Really fun. Thank you, Dr. G, again.
You're welcome. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you to our sponsor, Elite Care.
That's right. EliteCareTreatment.com. If you have any questions about dual diagnosis, they're a great center to visit for yourself or your loved ones. You can contact them, get more information, EliteCareTreatment.com. Their phone number is 888-511-0607.
And I really highly encourage all of you to go to therapycable.com on Facebook and share these episodes with friends and family and others who may benefit from this as well. We'll catch you all next time.